Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today it's all about the influence within a kingdom. You're going to be scratching and clawing your way to try to gather royal, mystical, and clerical influence because this is a game of beastie betrayal. This is a Brutal Kingdom by Kosmos. It's for 3 to 4 players. Today we're going to do a rules school where I'm going to give you a quick overview of how the game works, and then I'm going to teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rules yourself. So let's get started. Brutal Kingdom is a 3 to 4 player tactical card game where you're trying to gain influence tokens by playing cards to gain points at the end of the game. You'll be playing cards to activate abilities that do different things like looking at other players' hands, but be careful because some players can be eliminated by other players, like the Abbot can eliminate the Witch, and the Poisoner can eliminate the Abbot. But you don't just eliminate that player, you eliminate everyone you've played, stopping you from getting tokens at the end of the round. There's all different relationships as to who eliminates who, as to which characters actually are able to get tokens at the end of the round. So there's 4 chapters, and each chapter you're going to be playing 4 cards, so you're only playing 16 cards over the course of the game. And the point scoring is very interesting, where you'll get a certain amount of points for each of the tokens, depending on how many are actually left between the chapel and the general supply at the end, so there's a scarcity and a moving currency for each of the tokens. To set up, first take the chapel card and place it in the middle of the table. Then you're going to group all the different tokens together in like piles. On one side you can place the different tokens that will be points in the game. The blue ones are royal influence, the green ones are clerical influence, and the yellow ones are mystical influence. On the other side we have elimination tokens that are in values of 1 and 3. You'll then take this set of cards and you'll split them up into 2 piles, one that has a light back and one that has a darker back. Now if you're playing with 3 players, there's a few differences that you have to do for setup. Number 1 is you're going to take 2 of each of the colored influence tokens out of the game. You can place these back in the box. Second is you'll find the character cards from those decks of cards, the ones that have the light background and the dark backgrounds, and you'll find the cards that are labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the Charlatan, the Black Knight, the Courtesan, and the Clairvoyant. You're going to take all 4 of those cards, you're going to completely remove them from the game and put them back in the box. You do not use these cards in a 3-player game. Next, give each player 2 different player aids. They look differently, everyone gets 2 of these. These tell you the number of the characters, what their names are, and some of the details that we'll go over later. Next, you'll find out who is going to play first. That's the one that has the most regal demeanor. And if there's no consensus, the oldest player begins and gets the starting card in front of them as well. The game is 4 chapters long, and each chapter has 4 rounds. Now to set up a round, what you'll do is you'll first take the light back cards, you'll shuffle this deck, and deal each player 2 of these cards. After each player has received 2 light cards, there'll be 2 left over that weren't dealt out. Place those without looking at them face down just below the chapel. Each player will look at the 2 cards that were given to them secretly so that no other players can see. They'll look at the other sides of these 2 cards. They will choose one of these cards to pass face down to the player to the left. They must do that before they receive the card from the player from their right. Next, you'll take the dark cards and you'll deal out 2 to each player face down so that nobody can see them. And just like the light cards, you'll have 2 left over. Do not look at them. Place them face down just below the chapel and the light cards. Each player will now have 2 dark cards. They're going to secretly look at these cards just like they did the light ones. They're going to choose one to pass this time to the neighbor to their right. They must do this before the player to their left passes them a card, and so you'll be left with 2 dark cards. So now that the chapter setup is complete, every player has 2 light cards and 2 dark cards that no one else can see, that they keep secret from everyone else, but they've seen and can continue to look at these, holding them in their hands secret from other players. Now the object of the game is you're going to be playing cards and hopefully gaining these different influence tokens each of the chapters, and at the end of the game you're going to be trying to have the most points of these tokens, which we'll go over later. Each round starts with the start player playing a card face up in front of them and possibly activating the ability. Now this card has the name, Witch. That tells you which character this is. It has a number which is important. Later I'll tell you about that. It also, some of them have these tokens on them. In this case, if this card is face up, meaning they are not eliminated, you'll be able to take a yellow token at the end of this chapter. Now, here we have the witch. We also have the skull and crossbones. This means that this card might possibly be able to be eliminated by another character. For example, on the player aid, we see the witch at the bottom here. It shows us, yes, the witch does have the yellow token, but it can be eliminated by the abbot. So the abbot card, if not played yet, could come out and eliminate the witch. After this player has played a card, the next player clockwise would play a card. Let's say the next player, they would be playing this in front of themselves, is the wizard. It has no effect, but if this wizard's alive at the end of this chapter, they're able to take 2 of those yellow tokens. But also it has a skull and crossbones, and if we look at the player aid, the wizard can be defeated by the berserker. So a lot of times you'd want to play this after you know the berserker's out, or if you know for a fact it's not in anybody's hand. And then in this case we're playing a 3-player round, so the last player of the round would play a card. And let's say the last player here plays the White Knight. It says you may swap a card from your hand with a card of the same color from the middle of the table. So let's say that player takes this card out and takes one from their hand and swaps it right out. Now note that the White Knight does have a blue token, and that means if the White Knight is alive at the end of the chapter, they'll be able to take a blue token. Now at the end of a round, which is what we just did, everyone played 1 card, they'll be able to see who gets to start the next round. Well, it's whoever has the highest card face up right on top of their pile. In this case, it's the wizard, so this player would then get the start card and be able to play the first card of the next round. Remember, there's 4 rounds for each chapter, because everyone's going to be playing 4 cards until the chapter is over. Now, it's not uncommon for the last player of the round to play a card that's high and then be the first player to play next round. So let's say this player plays the abbot. Oh no, the witch is mad. This says eliminate the witch. Anytime you have the word eliminate as the first word on an ability, it triggers immediately when you play the card, which means if the card that eliminates is face up and on the top of the pile from any other player, that player is immediately eliminated. If this card comes out and the witch is not there, but the witch comes later that round, it does not get killed. It only eliminates right away if the witch is on the top of anybody's pile. Now notice the abbot also, not only can they kill, they can also be killed, and they'll get a green token at the end if they're alive. So in this case, the witch, unfortunately, is dead. They've been eliminated, so they will flip them over. Now it's very important to note that if this was a future round and there were more cards under it, all of the cards, this card and all of them below, would get flipped face down, meaning that you might not get some tokens you were hoping to get. Every time you eliminate a player, you'll take a 1-point elimination token from the middle of the board. If you end up getting 3 of them over the course of the game, you can simply make change and turn those in for a single 3-point elimination tokens. That's how many points they're worth at the end of the game. Like, for example, the next player plays the Poisoner, which says eliminate the bishop or the abbot. Well, this player just played the abbot, and now it's going to get eliminated. Now remember, it had the wizard underneath and the abbot. It was going to get 2 yellow tokens and a green token at the end of the round, but because this killed the abbot, who is now out, eliminate happens right away. The abbot happened to have been out. Both of these cards get flipped over, and they have nothing available right now. And this player is the last player, and they play the bishop. Now the bishop can get killed, but they played this card because it's a 17, it's higher than a 5. They're actually going to be able to be the next player to play, and they can now cover this card up because the bishop, as we can see, can get killed by the Poisoner, but the Poisoner is already out. So in fact, this card does not get eliminated because it came out after the Poisoner. Remember, the eliminate happens only right then. So the bishop is safe even though the Poisoner defeats the bishop. Because the Poisoner was already out, the bishop can now safely come out. That would be the end of basically that round of this chapter. We would continue this until all players have gone through the 4th round of this chapter, and everyone will have 4 cards in front of them. Whether or not they're turned upside down doesn't matter, but everyone will have 4 cards, and let's see what the end of a round looks like. So at the end of the round, let's look at the cards. It's important to look at the numbers even on the last card played. So everyone's played their 4 cards. We have a 6, an 18, and a 7. Whoever has the highest card will then get the start card. This is important because what happens at the end of the round goes in order with the start card. So whoever this player is will get to possibly take some tokens. So each player, starting with this player, would look at their cards. This player is going to get 2 blue tokens. Nothing there. 2 green tokens. This player was eliminated. So they're going to get 2 green tokens and 2 blue tokens. These will be placed in front of them for future chapters, and this is open information that everyone can see. This next player has nothing on this card, has 1 green token, and then everyone else was eliminated, so that's all they got. It's not uncommon to sometimes have all of your cards eliminated and getting no tokens. You would do this for every player. And as you can see, having the start card at the end of the round is very important because you're the first to draw tokens. As the game gets into the last chapters, sometimes tokens will run out and you want to be able to get them before other players. Also at the end of the round, if the Saint card has not been played, you would take a 1-point elimination token and put it on one of the empty spots in the chapel. This is keeping track of how many chapters you've actually played. We've played 1. The game is 4 full chapters. Now there is a card called the Saint that I just talked about. In this case, when that card is played in front of you during the game, you would get to choose any one of these tokens and add it there. That also basically counts as the counter for how many chapters you've played, but you're also changing the amount of tokens that are left. We'll go over more what that means at the end of the game. And to set up that next chapter, you're going to leave the start card in front of the player that has it. You'll take all the cards back, you'll shuffle up the darks and the lights separately, and again deal them out just as we did at the beginning of the first chapter. That's always how you set up a new chapter. Now at the end of the 4th chapter, we will do final scoring, and you'll get points for the tokens that you have depending on how many were left. For example, for the blue royal tokens, in the general supply there's 2 left. There's also 2 that were placed in the chapel during the game by the Saint card. So there's a total of 4 blue tokens. Everybody will receive 4 points for each blue token they have. I have 3 blue tokens, times the 4 is 12 points so far for me. Now I have 4 yellow tokens, but there's none left in the supply and there's none left in the chapel, which means those are worth no points. 4 yellow, 0 points. There's 1 left on the chapel for the green tokens and none in the supply, so each of those are worth 1 point. I have 1 of them for 1 point. And I have 2 single point elimination tokens. So I have 12 points from the blue, 1 point, and 2 points here for a total of 15 points. Everyone counts up their points in the same manner. Whoever has the most points is the winner. If there's a tie, the person who has the starting card at the end of the game is the winner. If it's still tied, then the player clockwise to the left of that closest will win. Most of the character's special abilities are quite self-explanatory, but here are some that I feel need some more explanation. The Executioner, when you play this card, you get to name a character. Then, if a character that you named is played later, then it will get eliminated. For example, someone plays the Executioner down and they say the Wizard. And let's say the next player then plays a Wizard down, that player would then be eliminated amongst all cards below it as well, just like normal. So that works different from the normal elimination, which happens as the card is played, where this one you say it, and as long as this card is on the top of that player's pile, if that player is played down, they're eliminated, with the exception is you cannot use this on the Saint. Now, if this player had come down and then played a different card, and then this card played the Wizard, it's okay, even though they claim the Wizard, because the Executioner has been covered up. The King and Queen work pretty much the same way as the Executioner, except that you don't get to name the card, it does it to a specific card. For example, the Queen, you put this down, and then if the King is laid down before it comes back and the Queen is covered again, then the King dies. And vice versa. The King does the same thing to the Queen, the King comes out first, and then if the Queen comes back out before the King is covered, then the Queen will die. So it works exactly as I just taught you as the Executioner, but they're for specific cards. The Intriguer allows you to swap this card with a character in play that has the highest rank or number. Now, if this card does have the highest number, then nothing's swapped. And also, when you do swap for a card that has the highest rank, you do not then trigger that new ability. For example, if I swap the Intriguer with the King, this ability does not get triggered. When you play the Inquisitor, you name a character. If somebody has that character, they must swap that card with one of the cards in the middle, and they cannot look at the cards in the middle before they swap them. If nobody has the character name, then nothing happens, and the Inquisitor can either be a 20 or a 0 of rank. You get to decide, and you decide right while it's played. The Black Knight, there's no immediate effect, but if you don't receive any influence tokens at the end of the chapter, you take one of your choice out of the piles. It doesn't matter if you eliminate or have elimination tokens when you do this. Playing the Charlatan allows you to revive one of the characters that's already been eliminated in your pile. If you don't have any eliminated characters, simply no effect. If I have more than one, only the card that I want to be revived will be revived, none of the others. So let's say I wanted to revive the Queen, we would go ahead and do that. Now, this is active. You would not activate the ability on the card that you revive, but this card is now susceptible to somebody else doing something to it as the normal rules. The clairvoyant allows you to secretly look at the 4 cards in the middle of the table. That's the 2 dark and 2 light. They can look at them once, and they cannot rearrange the positions of them. The courtesan allows you to swap both a dark and a light card with another player. It could be the same player, or it could be 2 different players. You could swap the dark and a light with one player, both cards, or you could say, one player I want you to swap a dark, and another player I want you to swap a light. And you have to swap before you get to see what they're swapping with you. Well, I hope this helped you dive right in the game and helped you learn it without having to read the rulebook, and allows you to enjoy the game faster. Now, if you have any questions about the rules or anything like that, go ahead and just leave them as comments in the video here, and we'll do the best to answer them.